All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another exciting episode of Scaling Secrets. Today, we have a privilege of hosting a true powerhouse in the world of business strategy and leadership. Please join me in welcoming Brian Doyle, the president and CEO of Holden Advisors. With a proven track record of driving revenue and probability, Brian has helped his clients secure an astonishing $2 billion in new business and also double their market share and reduce commercial expenses by 20%. But that's not all. Brian's expertise also extends beyond the boardroom, as he's also a decorated U.S. Air Force pilot and renowned professor at Rutgers Business School. So everybody get ready as we dive into a really enlightening conversation, about price setting, negotiation, sales strategies, and much more. So welcome to the show, Brian. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Alex. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I'm really excited. Let's, jump right into it. Obviously, we all have your background and everything, and, your success in improving revenue and probability for your clients is truly remarkable, to say the least. So, can you, really just share with us some of the most challenging, situations that you've encountered personally, and, how have you managed to turn that around?
Yeah. So Alex, I think in terms of like helping our clients improve their profitability, there's two aspects to it. Number one is price setting. So making sure that you're charging the right price for the value that you provide to your customers. And that's easier said than done. Really understanding how your customers use your products, what value they derive from it. And when I'm talking about value, I'm talking about, how do they make money? How do they reduce expenses? How do they minimize their risk?
Hmm.
And so that's a big element of it. Then the second element of it is what we call price getting. That's the negotiation piece. And in terms of big challenges we have, our clients sometimes are up against some of the best procurement organizations in the entire world. Probably the best example is Walmart. So Walmart has a group of folks that what they do, they have been trained over years and years, and their job is to drive the price of their suppliers down. And so there's this back and forth of if my client is selling into Walmart, Walmart's probably a big buyer of theirs, could be 30, 40, 50% of their revenue. So you can't afford to lose that account. But by the same token, you can't afford to undercharge for it either.
Hmm.
So that's a lot of times it comes down to that is like, how do we coach our clients to find that perfect middle ground where they're making the money they deserve and they don't have to be concerned about losing a client?
Yeah, that's really interesting. So you elaborate more on, that middle ground. How do you find the balance? Does it depend on, what industry, customer or organization that you're working with, or what are those, underlying terms to really figure out where you should be charging, setting those prices?
It starts with understanding your own value. Really, like I was saying before, what we bring to your customers.
Hmm.
And then when I say understanding, it comes to quantifying that value too. What does that mean to your customers in terms of, those various things that they can do with your product or your service? And then the way that we think about it is one of our big tools that gets used all the time is what we call give gets. And that means that if our client's customer, Walmart, in the example that we were using before, throws up their hands and says, "There's no way I could pay this price." So instead of just acquiescing on one end of the spectrum or on the other end of the spectrum, walking away and saying, "Well, I don't need Walmart. We got to find this middle place." What we advise our clients to do is to say, "Hey, that's cool. Why don't we strip this piece of value away? Why don't we deliver slower? Why don't we hold less in our inventory and make you hold more? Why don't we give you a slightly inferior product, whatever it is,
Hmm.
and then we can lower the price." And what that does is exposes that buyer into what is really important to them.
Yep.
So they say that price is all that matters. But when you give them those sorts of choices, they may say, "Great, I really needed a lower price. The inferior product is wonderful."
Hmm.
More often than not, though, Alex, what they say is, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, we want the very best." And
Hmm.
then you've just changed that conversation from price to value. And you can that space in the middle that we're talking about that gives folks the opportunity to say, well, great, then why don't we do this? Or, we can trade this off, but not that off. And you find that middle ground.
Mm-hmm. Yep. You're basically, peeling back that onion layer by layer and, figuring out those pain points. And, I think this is an art. It definitely, takes, time to develop and build those skills. But yeah, I really like how you mentioned that a lot of the times it isn't the price. And, ultimately, if you can show the value that you're going to be receiving, then, that price isn't even in the conversation anymore. So I love it.
That's right.
Yeah. So in terms of, just starting your company, Holden Advisors, can you talk about just like the early days, some of the challenges that you faced, as you guys were really scaling your company and, how are you able to, overcome some of those early day challenges?
Yeah. So I probably answer the question a couple of different ways, Alex. So the company's been in business for 20 years, family owned, and they worked through the challenges of starting at that price setting. That's all the company did was price setting, and then figured out that wasn't enough and had to add that negotiation piece, which is that the price getting aspect. And then for me personally, I became president of the firm in February of 2020. So you may recall that that's basically the very beginning of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
so you want to talk about challenges. So
Not so good days.
we did nearly in person. In
Yep.
February of 2020, we did nearly everything in person.
Mhm.
And so how do we continue to serve our clients and never be able to be in the same room as them? And so one of the things we did right away is we negotiation workshops. We're teaching folks how to identify different buyer types, how to use give gets, a variety of different things.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had to transition that from in person to virtual. And it was number one priority. And this was the end of February. We figured out, oh my gosh, this thing's not going away anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
And on May 4th of that year was our first virtual workshop. And so, that was one of the big early challenges. And then, another thing for us was as we grew rapidly. So it was, kind of doubling. Then the next year we doubled after that. Inc. 5000, a couple years in a row, Financial Times, fastest growing companies, so recognition there.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to that sort of growth in a service-oriented firm like us, not only how do we hire the right people to serve our clients, but how do we build the infrastructure for ourselves to be able to grow as well? So that was certainly a challenge that we had to overcome.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like you mentioned, right when you have to, transition to online remote with the pandemic back in, March 2020, that could, throw a lot of spiral and, turmoil in any organization as it did. We saw it, we lived through those days. And, I like how you mentioned, having the right, people in place, talent acquisition is so important. So can you talk about, how you, really the company, retain the right employees and how that's, talent acquisition is so important, in your industry?
For sure. Yeah. It really, it's people that do what we do. We don't sell widgets. We don't, sell technology. We're selling us. One of the things, Alex, that I came was a book by Patrick Lencioni called The Ideal Team Player. And it was basically the biggest takeaway was hire people who are humble, hungry, and smart. And if you hire people like that, you're going to be great. And, they need technical expertise. They need pricing. They need negotiation experience for what we do. But it's about humble, hungry, and smart. And I had a conversation, no kidding, it was with a team member of ours. She's been with the company 2+ years. And she said, "This is the weirdest place I've ever worked." And I was like,
You explain. Explain.
Tell me more. Yeah. And what she said was, "Hey, I have never worked someplace where everybody does their job. Everybody's willing to step in for when somebody else has a problem. Everybody respects everybody else. Your voice is heard." She's like, it's it's crazy. And I think at first when she joined the team, she was like, it seems like this, but I'm not just yet. I got to see it,
Mhm.
more than a few times. And now she's just like, this is bizarre, but in a good way.
Yeah, that's so important, having, that open door policy, being able to, really connect as a leader with your teammates and cross function too. I see a lot of organizations, they get, they build strong relationships internally within their department, but they don't branch out into other departments within the company, like marketing doesn't work with the engineers a lot, for an example. So, like finding ways where you can kind of cultivate everybody, and whether that's, team building events, workshops, like you mentioned earlier, whatever that looks like. I think that's so important for building company culture. So, but in terms of, like strategic planning, how big are you guys into, building business plans, and, how often do you, uh, tweak your approach to, just strategic planning for your company?
Alex, you cut out there for a second. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Alex, you froze on me.
Me, Brian?
Again.
Alrighty, I'm not sure exactly what happened there, but let's just keep going. We'll clean it up. We'll edit it. Apologize about that.
You're Alex, you
Am I
yeah, okay.
am I
You're
chopping in now?
you're freezing on me.
Yeah, you look
Yeah.
blurry on my end, but I can hear you, so I think it might be on my end. Let's give it one more go. If not, I could send you a Zoom link really quick, but I'll speed it up, so I don't want to waste your time. So, um,
Yeah, and Alex, I've got time.
oh,
So we can do our thing and
perfect,
just hopefully it works.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we'll chop it up. There's no issue at all. So Riverside's really good with that. But I'll just ask you that question again from the beginning.
Okay.
So, in terms of, let me just make sure we're recording. Apologies. Right. So, in terms of just strategic planning, do you guys have a business plan, process in place, and how often are you, revisiting your strategic planning for your company?
So what we do, Alex, is we think about things in really in weekly terms, in quarterly terms, in annual, and then we have a 3-year goal and a 10-year
Mhm.
goal. And so on a weekly basis, we're meeting as a leadership team and working through first half of the agenda is the same stuff, looking at a scorecard, talking about any employee issues or client issues that we've got, just sort of a checklist and making sure that we're hitting the important metrics. And then we do a 60 minutes of issue resolution. So what's coming up that isn't really a to do is more of a strategic issue, those sorts of things. We do that on a weekly
Mhm.
basis. On a quarterly basis, we have our quarterly goals. We call them rocks, and they're the 4 to 7 things that we want to make sure that we hit in that quarter that line up to annual goals. And then, of course, there's a 3-year goal as well that, hey, are we tracking toward this thing that we want it to
Mhm.
be? The 3-year goal, annual goal just kind of resets. Every year we take a look at that and say, are we tracking in the right direction? Is it still who we want to be? And
Mhm.
so on.
Gotcha. And in terms of, like, KPIs, is there, KPIs for each department, or, as a company as a whole, or, how is that, broken up? Does that feed into your business planning?
Yeah, mostly it's at the company
Mhm.
level. So we've got certain things that we're looking at on a weekly basis, like outreach and leads and other business development metrics. On a monthly basis, we're looking at things like employee engagement and how many projects per person folks are working on to make sure that we're not burning people up as business
Mhm.
grows. And so those are the sorts of the KPIs that we're looking at those intervals. And then on a quarterly basis, we would have a revenue goal, a profit margin goal, and so
Mhm.
on.
Gotcha. Definitely. Yep. Pretty standard. And I think, those are so important to have, especially as you're scaling a company, having those, procedures in place, having a blueprint to be able to really track your data and have metrics in place. So I love that. But I want to transition, Brian. You're a former U.S. Air Force pilot, which is awesome. So, obviously you've faced some high pressure
Right.
situations, and, I'm really curious, how has your military experience really influenced your approach to leadership, problem solving and ultimately your success in the business world?
That's a great question, Alex. I appreciate it. It absolutely shaped me. So when I was active duty, I was a C-17 pilot. If you're not familiar, 4-engine cargo jet. We could put anything in the back, from tanks and trucks and helicopters to the presidential motorcade.
Pretty badass stuff. Pretty
So,
badass. Yeah.
so airplane. And in terms of, sort of the pinnacle of my flying experience, I commanded 31 combat missions into Kosovo.
Mm-hmm.
So there were, hundreds of thousands of refugees that the Serb government at the time was wanted to eliminate, and our job was to protect those refugees. So I was flying in every night with the first nights were rockets and rocket launchers. Then after that, it became attack helicopters and armored personnel carriers and those sorts of things. And so super high stress situations. And to answer your question, that has just it's opened my aperture like way bigger than it would normally be. So when I think about what is stress at Holden Advisors, it's not anything like that.
Yeah.
One of the kind of mantras or my leadership tenets that I picked up out of the military was, it's not an emergency unless lives are at stake.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have a client problem, it's not a crisis. We're going to take care of it. We're going to handle it. It's not, nobody's going to be shooting at us today. And so I think and this goes for all the folks who serve in the military, I think your ability to manage stress is really important. And so that's huge for me. And I would say it's probably number one. Another is, I always had a mantra that if you take care of your people, they will take care of the mission. Mm-hmm. And if you have great people, motivated people, that works. It did in the military, it does with Holden Advisors. If I can help my people be in a position to succeed and go do the right thing and have the tools and the skills to go do what they're supposed to do for the clients, then I can spend my time leading the organization versus being in the weeds every single day.
Exactly. Yep. You can kind of get out of the business a little bit. You get a bigger scope of, the priorities that are really important. And I love how you mentioned too, just being able to handle pressure. I think any, entrepreneur, CEO, business owner is going to have a lot of pressure. So, obviously, being in the Air Force gave you kind of that edge. And I think, everybody should, not shy away from pressure, especially in business. You got to embrace it. You got to kind of plan for it and be prepared and really just kind of welcome it with open arms, because it's going to come up whether you like it or not. I mean, it's just the reality in the business world. So,
yeah. And what I'd add to that, Alex, is you're exactly right. And because you can see it coming, it's going to happen. You have to carve out time to take care of yourself.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, whether that's meditating or going for a run or a walk or reading a book or petting the dog, whatever it is, you have to carve out that space for yourself, because at least speaking for me, I mean, I can run at a high level for a while. And then when I start to break down, man, I start to break down. Yep. Not as nice a person and not as smart, not as thoughtful, all those things. And so I got to make sure that I take care of myself. And one of the things I talk about from time to time, sometimes people ask you, like, what's the best advice you ever received? I get great advice every time I'm on a commercial airline, because the flight attendant always says, put on your own oxygen mask before assisting others.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And when you're leading a business, it's the same thing. And sometimes you got to put on your own oxygen mask, and then you can help your team. But if you don't take care of yourself, it only works for so long.
100%. Yeah. You can't provide value to others if you're going down, if your ship's going down. And I think personal development, is so important. I know everybody, especially today, all the gurus coming up, all the young entrepreneurs, personal development, all this and that. But if you find what works for you and you build that routine, whether that's getting up in the morning and cold plunging or, sleeping till 9 and then starting your work a little bit later, building a schedule and a routine around what works for you is going to really help in all areas of your life. Because, like you said, if you lose that edge and you're groggy or you're not sharp and you're going into a business meeting trying to pitch a deal, trying to negotiate, you're gonna struggle, and it's gonna show through your team as well. So you're definitely a reflection of the peers around you. So.
You're right.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned, reading a little bit. So I want to, touch on your book a little bit, Brian. So obviously, your book is called Gray Goldfish: Navigating the Gray Areas to Successfully Lead Every Generation. That touches on the complexities of leading different generations in the workforce. I'm curious, can you give us just a sneak peek, some of those key strategies that you would really recommend for really effectively managing diverse groups in the workforce?
Right. And it's Alex, the golden rule is treat others like you would like to be treated. And really what we need is the rule that says treat others the way they would like to be treated.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And what's key here is not just, oh, Gen Z likes this, millennials like that. What we have to do is think about it in the context of our own generation. And so, for instance, I'm Gen X. My generation was the latchkey children, meaning that we came home from school, we let ourselves in the house, we made our own dinners, we sort of did our own homework. We did a lot of things on our own. And so we like to work like that at work. Hey, give me the assignment, let me finish it. Don't look over my shoulder. Just let me do my thing and I'll turn it in when I'm done. But millennials, to pick a generation, are far more group oriented. They're in school, they worked on group projects. We never did that. They had, bigger friend groups. People, when you went to the prom, you didn't have a single date, man. You went with five other couples. It's just sort of how people did that, right? It's not right. It's not wrong. They're just used to working in groups. And they're used to getting more feedback, more input into what they're working on. And so if I'm a Gen X leader and I'm leading a millennial, I got a blind spot, which is that person's going to want to work in a group. They want to get more feedback. And I'm thinking to myself, I'll just leave them alone because that's what I would want. And I have to be aware of those differences where I say, it doesn't matter what I want. That person's going to respond and excel in a slightly different environment. I got to give that to them if I want them to be successful. And so that's why, one of the biggest takeaways from when I speak on this topic or in the book, we have a 5x5 matrix that is all the generations across the top, all the generations down. And so you find your generation in the matrix, you come down to the generation that you're leading or communicating with, and there's tips in there how to recruit and manage and train and inspire that generation in the context of your own, like I'm talking about.
That was my next question. So do you recommend, somebody that's, inspiring to increase their skills working with, a different diverse group to focus on that matrix and start there? Or is there, specific skills or tools you would recommend, somebody that's really trying to build a relationship with somebody that might be, 20, 30 years ahead of where they're at?
It's a great place to start. And it works both directions. So you can say, hey, I'm working for somebody that I don't understand.
Yeah.
How do I bridge that gap? It's not always down. It's not always leader to employee. It might be the other direction.
Definitely. Yep, I completely agree. And, I think figuring out that direction, especially as a leader, a manager, VP, that's going to really help your company grow, its bottom line, build its culture, and ultimately be successful in the marketplace. So in terms of, Holden Advisors, I'm curious, Brian, like what excites you the most about the work you're doing, and some goals or aspirations that you have for the future of the company?
Mm-hmm. So, Alex, I love the idea of helping our clients get what they're worth, get paid for what they're worth. That's really exciting because for the most part, our clients are good people. For the most part, they are working hard. They're just like the rest of us. And to be a good person working hard and selling a product and then having somebody on the other end not pay what it's worth, whether it's because you didn't price it correctly or because they're beating you up, in the negotiation, either way, it doesn't feel very good. And been on that side of the equation for sure, which is why I am where I am
Yep.
today. So it feels really good to be able to help folks and see it and have them call me up and go, hey, I just had the call with my customer. And remember the guys who were treating me poorly? I did what you told me to do and it's working. And I closed the deal and we closed the deal at our price. And, those sorts of things feel really good. In terms of where we're headed, right now we are mostly project based. So we do a project, we finish a project, we help our clients implement it, and then, man, I hope it works. Where we're headed is connecting the dots between those projects. So, we finish a project, but can we coach somebody along the way as a tail on the end of that? We do workshops, but can we have online, and actually now we do as of a few months ago, can we have digital modules where they access self-paced learning to continue that learning after the workshop is done? We're starting to do pricing as a service. So folks are hiring and they say, I don't even want to have a pricing division. Can you
Do it
just
for me. Yeah.
do this for us because you're way better at it than we are? Instead of doing a project and setting us up, can you just do it? And so that's where we're headed, Alex, into the future. And that's super exciting for me.
I got you. I got you. And I love that. It seems like there's a lot of automation coming down the pipeline in the coming years. And I think that awesome as, an organization to continuing, that automation, that, innovation within a company. So, and I want to go off of that, obviously there's so many, emerging trends really with just technology, and within the landscape of sales and marketing, negotiating, those are, really big industries that can benefit from just all the new technology trends. So I'm curious, what do you think will have, the biggest impact on your industry in the near future? And how can other businesses really stay ahead of the technology curve?
Well, you have to continuously learn. And that's tough when you get something like AI coming in and, do I use Bard or ChatGPT or what's all this mean and how do I use it? And I saw a webinar from somebody else the other day and they said, hey, you're going to start using AI and it's going to improve your productivity and then it's going to dip because you're going to go like, well, what if I tried this? Well, what if I tried that? And some of those things won't work. And then it comes back up and becomes really helpful. And I feel like as leaders, we have to ride that wave and, continue through that dip and have some belief in like, okay, this is going to change what we do. In terms of our industry, I think what AI is going to do is cut out all of the really easy work, all the busy work of, simple research for sellers, a little bit of basic strategy or, hey, give me a rundown of this customer and all their competitors. Boom. Instead of spending 3 hours on that, I can do it in like, probably no kidding, like 5 or 10 seconds. That part's going to get wiped out. But the part that is the real negotiation or the real finding a common ground with your customer, really understanding what their value is, at least up to this point, I'm not seeing anything that's scratching the surface of that. That still needs a human being interacting with another human being to find out what matters.
Yeah. Would you say that's kind of one of your biggest concerns, with all the AI automations and, technology immersing, losing that people touch, that building relationships, whether that's in person or on Zoom? Do you think, that something that could be, something you're concerned with within your company?
I think, Alex, there's going to be a bit of a boomerang effect here. And it sort of reminds me of COVID. So everything was in person, everything became remote. And then now people can't wait to see us again in person. Hey, I don't want a remote workshop. I don't want to just do this thing over Zoom. Can you come see me? Can we brainstorm together on a whiteboard or whatever? And I suspect that that's how AI is going to work too. There's going to be, there was no AI. Then there's a big rush of it. We're like, I don't have to interact with another human. I can just do all these things on my own. And then, a year, 2, 3 years, people are going to say, yeah, that's all great. And it did simplify my life to some extent. but I need to continue to interact with another human and brainstorm and work on problems together and sit in the same room and all that. And I think that that's where it's going to come back to, while some of these other aspects just continue to
Yep,
advance.
I completely agree. That's a great perspective, and I know it's super trendy. Everybody wants to hop on the AI bandwagon, but I definitely think how we've been doing business for decades and decades, the core way of how we've communicated in business is going to stay the same. So, or at least be magnified in a way. So, I love it. But in terms of, I want to go into a few rapid fire questions here. So, and then we'll save some time for the end. So, I have a few questions I'd like to ask. And the first one is, what is one non-negotiable you need as a business owner or an entrepreneur looking to get into your space?
You got to have the values to be a good person. I don't care how smart you are. I don't care how accomplished you are in your life. You have to have character and you have to have values. And if you don't, I don't want you in our organization. And I think ultimately your clients are going to figure that out too.
Exactly. Be authentic, and that's something that you just have within you. You can't teach that. So
yeah, and genuine,
yeah.
Alex. I mean, I see so much like written online about, oh, this is the way to appear empathetic.
Yeah.
It's like, we shouldn't be teaching people how to be good actors. We should be teaching them how to be good people.
Exactly. Yep. And you can't really, you gotta want to be a good person. You can't really build that up from external things. So completely agree. What's something that people think is important in business, negotiations, sales that doesn't matter that much?
That's interesting. I think one thing that comes to mind is that you absolutely need your customer, and your customer doesn't really need you.
Yeah.
There seems to be the perception of this huge imbalance of, I have to sell this because I got to make my number, and geez, my customer doesn't even need me. I have to talk them into it. And I would suggest is that playing field is far more level than you're led to believe.
Definitely. Yep. That's why, you just keep building value propositions and giving as much as you can to, your clients, your customers, because, like we said earlier, what goes around comes around. So last question, what are the top 3 tips, about just business, scaling a company that you've cultivated over the years that, you want your audience and our audience to walk away with today?
Yes, number 1, we hit on this already, hire the right people. It sounds cliche, but humble, hungry, and smart people are going to make your business way better, even if you're not the smartest guy in the room. I can speak from experience. That's how that works. Number 2, I think is continuing to grow. Learn, like we're talking about with AI or other innovations. You got to keep stretching yourself. And then number 3 is price for your value. No matter what business you're in, figure out what you're worth to your customers and set your price at that level.
Completely agree. And I think it might take some time to really set that price, but have the right people around you, have people that are smarter than you, helping you make that decision, and do market research, figure out what your competitors are charging, and really spend time building that price and figuring out how you can provide as much value and squeeze as much out of the lemon as possible when you're working that out. But yes, I want to wrap up here. I want to give you a few minutes to just any last remarks. Where can we find you, Brian? And like what are some things you're looking forward to in 2024?
Thanks, Alex. Folks, if you're interested in learning more, can email me directly. It's just bdoyle, DOYLE, at holdenadvisors.com, or find me on LinkedIn. Brian Doyle at Holden Advisors on LinkedIn is a great way to connect with me. I'm there a lot, posting a lot. And Alex, we're at a great spot. Last year, for a variety of reasons, the economy was kind of slow, and November, December, and January were good for us. And so I'm excited about the core business that we have that continues to grow. And then these, some of this innovation I was talking about earlier. really going to do good things for our clients. And it's and I think it'll be simpler and it'll be easier for them, and it'll give them the value that they're looking for in between projects from us.
Definitely. And I think, I'm really excited as well to really see kind of just the upward growth at Holden Advisors, and really see how, you guys can continue to automate and build out, great systems and tools and processes to really, continue to, be a leader in the marketplace. So,
Cool.
yeah,
Thank you.
but awesome. So, I just want to wrap up. I want to give you, a praise. Appreciate you being on the show today. It was great, learning more about your story, and, I look forward to, seeing the future, and how you can really continue to grow as a company. So I appreciate it, Brian.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
awesome. Well, this is another episode of Scaling Secrets. Until next time, thank you guys.